This morning, the American President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on imported steel and a 10% tariff on imported aluminum. This obviously has major implications for many economies around the world, including the United States, but I want you to watch what the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had to say about this.
Ingots produced, aluminum ingots produced in Canada are used by American manufacturers in a broad range of things. We import more steel than the Americans import. Sorry, we have a significant trade surplus. The Americans have a significant trade surplus with us on steel, which means we buy steel from them, they buy steel from us.
I don't even know what that was. What I think it was some bureaucrat tried to explain to him what a trade surplus was, and then he thought he would try to explain that back to media. Didn't have any context and totally failed. So this is pretty disastrous for Canada, because I'm sure the Americans watched this and were laughing their butts off. And I'm sure a lot of industry folks in Canada watched this and just went, good gravy, we don't have a hope. So I think that Justin Trudeau could have done a few things a lot better. He could have come out right away, right off the hop, and said, we will stand with Canadian steel producers, and we will make sure that in the context of NAFTA or whatever other means that we have available, that we're going to push back on this decision because it's not in the best interest of either country. And he could have talked about a lot of stuff that was in the Wall Street Journal today, for example, if he had read some of these articles, which I think were spot on, in talking about the fact that this tariff is going to impact the United States economy in a lot of far-reaching ways, which aren't necessarily positive. And for those of you who are watching from the U.S., I think that your government has done some good things recently in terms of making your economy more resilient by looking at tax reform in a lot of different industries, as well as regulatory reform, stuff that we should have been doing here in Canada. We're actually doing the opposite, but that's the topic for another video. But what this is probably going to do is see American steel producers increase the cost of steel, or increase the price of steel to match that of the imported steel that now has a tariff on it. And this means that it's going to do two things. That profit that will be created will go to corporate executives, most likely, in the form of bonuses. And it is also probably going to be passed down in terms of increased costs to consumers, and that's everybody from, a small farmer in the Midwest who's looking at building a steel barn this year, to some of the big major manufacturers in the U.S. that employ a lot of people that use steel for input. Trudeau could have pointed out the fact that there are over 6.5 million Americans who work in industries where steel is an input to their industry, as opposed to 140,000 people who are employed in steel producing industries. And so there's going to be a disproportionate impact of this tariff. And he could have talked about the fact too that those 140,000 jobs in the steel producing industry in the U.S. The way to protect those or grow those jobs, or it's a more nuanced conversation about how to make that industry more productive in light of automation, in light of other production efficiencies that other countries have produced. There's a lot of difficult conversations about the steel industry in the U.S. that aren't included in this decision today, and that's detrimental. Those are the things that our Prime Minister could have talked about. He could have sounded really smart, and he could have, I think, even just said, look, we value and appreciate, obviously, the relationship that we have with the United States, and we want to see that continue and grow. These sorts of tariffs are not productive or conducive to looking at that long-term economic relationship over time that benefits both economies and creates jobs in both economies. Instead, we got what I played you earlier, which is pretty embarrassing. You know what? Write to the Prime Minister, let him know that you're not impressed. Tweet at him, make a post on social media, on Facebook, whatever. But this sort of stuff has got to stop, because it's not productive for the Canadian economy, or frankly for the U.S. economy. Working hard for you in Calgary. Have a great day.